She's living off her parents. She's gonna end up a burden. That's what they said while sipping the champagne I paid for. No one knew. But my sister, she made sure they found out. Hi, my name is Savannah Collins, the failure of the family, until my results started speaking louder than their opinions. Grab your coffee and come with me, because this story starts with rejection, but ends with respect. I always knew I made people uncomfortable, not because I was loud or rebellious, just different. While my cousins dreamed of government jobs, law school, or taking over the family business, I dreamed of starting something of my own. A cozy cafe, an online store, a paper goods shop with charm. My ideas changed shape over time, but the fire inside me never did. To them, that fire was a threat. She's got her head in the clouds, my uncles would say. My grandma put it more bluntly. What she needs is a husband, not a business license. I tried, and I failed. My first business crashed in 3 months. The second barely made it a year. I mispriced, misjudged, trusted the wrong people. But to them, those weren't just mistakes. They were confirmation. See, she's not cut out for this. They never said it to my face. Of course not. But they said it to my parents, my sister, anyone who would listen. While my sister was praised as the golden one, I was the cautionary tale. That's what happens when you let someone dream too big. And slowly, I shrank in silence. My parents never called me a failure, but they also didn't know how to defend me. At family lunches, when the comments came, my mom would lower her eyes. My dad would change the subject. And I would smile, not out of strength, but survival. Every family gathering felt like a courtroom, and I was always the defendant, without a lawyer. Eventually, I asked them to stop talking about me. No more, she's trying something new. No more, she's got another project. I just wanted space to grow without being watched. But that came at a cost. The silence became a breeding ground for rumors. They said I'd given up on life, that I was mooching off my parents, that I was lazy, useless, invisible. And the more I tried to protect myself, the more they tried to erase me. Then I became a joke. A cousin once asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, "So what does she even do these days?" And they all laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it hurt. I started skipping those gatherings. Suddenly I was antisocial, ungrateful, weird. But no one saw I was holding on to the little hope I had left. I clung to focus like it was air. I studied, planned, started over. And this time I promised myself, I'm never going back to the bottom, not even for applause. Loneliness became my routine, and over time my strength. I learned to trust myself, even when everything around me screamed otherwise. My stumbles became lessons, and in the middle of all that silence, something started to grow. Quietly, slowly, but it was mine. My first project started to work, and no one knew. Except her. The only one who never turned her back on me, my sister. She didn't understand everything I was doing, but she always said, "If it matters to you, it matters to me." Having her support felt like breathing again after being underwater. I didn't need a crowd, just one safe place. And she was that place. She never asked me to change. She saw me. She believed in me. And at that point in my life, that meant more than any paycheck or contract. She reminded me of who I was, even when I'd forgotten myself. It was in that silence, no cameras, no posts, no applause, that the real turning point happened. Every step I took was invisible to them, but not to me. I didn't need the world to see me. I just needed not to lose myself. And while they whispered behind my back, I was already building a road none of them had the courage to walk. The courage to keep going, even without being understood. I had no idea that, years later, some of them would try to get close again, that they'd ask for jobs, that they'd drop my name in conversations like it had always meant something. But back then, none of that mattered. All I wanted was to breathe, in peace, to be, even in silence, the woman no one expected, but who was already on her way. I stopped explaining myself, stopped sharing plans, stopped giving people updates. I muted family group chats, archived my social media, declined invitations, and pulled back. Not out of weakness, but for protection. For the first time, I realized that in order to grow in peace, I had to disappear for a while. While the world kept spinning, I chose to pause. To look inward, to study, to sketch out ideas, to work in silence. I didn't want applause anymore. I wanted roots, and roots don't grow under spotlights. The first idea that worked came from a personal wound. It wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't genius, but it was honest. I built a basic website, sold a simple product, treated every customer with care. And little by little, they came. Not many, but loyal. Each compliment made me cry in secret, not out of pride, but relief. For the first time, I was earning money that didn't come from pity. It came from effort, from me. I reinvested every cent, improved the packaging, built spreadsheets, studied marketing, all on my own. No mentors, no connections. When that little business turned 1 year old, still small but stable, I celebrated with a strong cup of coffee and a quiet smile. No Instagram post, no cake, just a sense of pride that no one could take from me. And that's when the second idea was born. Stronger, smarter, bolder. And once again, I didn't tell a soul. My parents knew, of course. I saw it in my dad's smile, in the way my mom quietly watched me print labels or pack boxes. But they respected my wish to stay silent. It was our unspoken pact. My sister, on the other hand, she celebrated every small win. "Savannah, you're becoming a machine," she'd say on the phone. And I'd answer, "I'm just becoming who I always was, now without anyone in my way." By the time I launched my third business, something I'd never known finally arrived. Stability. It wasn't about wealth, it was about dignity. I paid my bills. I chose who I worked with. I didn't owe anyone anything. And after everything I'd been called, that felt like freedom. Freedom to go, to build, to decide. I no longer needed to prove my worth. I just wanted to live without being afraid to be myself. But to the rest of the family, I was still invisible. "She still hasn't found her way, huh?" they'd say at dinners. "Such a smart girl, what a shame." They spoke with pity, like I was a promise that never became anything. Meanwhile, I had loyal clients, a small team, projects in motion. But I never corrected them, because if someone needs convincing, they were never going to believe in you anyway. And deep down, I liked the secret. It was my quiet revenge. While they mocked me, I grew. While they ignored me, I advanced. And I learned that there's a kind of strength that doesn't need to be shown, only carried. A strength that doesn't shout, it endures. And that gave me a kind of peace they'd never understand. Because only those who've been underestimated for too long know how to stand alone and still stand tall. I started treating family gatherings like reruns of a tired play. Same lines, same praise for the same people. And me, I'd sit quietly, eat in silence, because I knew, the moment I opened my mouth, they'd come with those helpful suggestions, dressed up as concern. So I chose to stay quiet, not because I lacked words, but because my time and energy were finally mine. And I refused to waste them on anyone who never cared to listen. I had everything I needed: freedom, purpose, peace. All I was missing was respect. But honestly, I'd stopped expecting it. Maybe that's just how life would be: quiet victories, unseen success. Until my sister got engaged. And in that moment, I saw an opportunity, not to prove anything, but to give her something she never asked for, but completely deserved. Because she never made me feel like I had to earn her love. And maybe that's exactly why. She deserved it all. She came into the room practically bouncing, her ring catching the light, her eyes still full of tears. "He proposed," she said, glowing. And I smiled, like I'd always known this moment would come. My sister had always been light. And now, standing on the edge of her next chapter, she was radiant. I hugged her tightly, and before she could even finish listing all the things she wanted for the wedding, I already knew. I wanted to give her something unforgettable. Not a gift you unwrap, but a memory, a legacy. The entire wedding would be my gift to her. I asked her to sit with me, told her my businesses were doing well, that I was stable, independent, finally free. She froze, then burst into tears. I never imagined you could afford something like that, she said. Are you sure? I was. My only request, keep it between us. No announcements, no family chatter. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew too well the backroom politics behind those fake hugs and shallow compliments. Even if I paid for everything, they'd still find a way to twist the story. And sure enough, as the big day approached, the comments started rolling in. Is Savannah even coming? She'll probably show up hitchhiking. Maybe on a bicycle, someone joked. A cousin laughed. She'll be the maid of honor at her own pity party. My uncles, always the concerned ones, said to my parents. Such a shame. So young and still so lost. I heard all of it. Not directly, of course. They never say it to your face. They prefer whispers soaked in poison, not the honesty of confrontation. It wasn't enough that I was single. I had to be a burden, too. They must still be paying all her bills. She'll never find a man. Now that, they'd say, pointing to my sister, is what success looks like. These lines, served between appetizers and fake smiles, still stung. Not because they were new, but because part of me still wanted to be seen by them. As much as I pretended not to care, some piece of me still wished I mattered. So I stayed quiet. I met with the planner, picked the flowers, signed the contracts. Every single thing was in my name. And no one knew. Because it wasn't about me. It was about her. I wanted her to shine. I wanted this to be the happiest day of her life. Even if, deep down, I knew it would also be a test for me. A test of maturity, of restraint, of self-worth. And I was ready. On the big day, I picked a simple dress. Elegant, understated. Hair up. Makeup soft. No jewelry. No drama. I ordered an Uber and arrived in silence. And the moment I stepped through the doors of that venue, I felt it, the looks. A cousin smirked. Aunt whispered to aunt. One uncle wouldn't even meet my eyes. The greetings were cold, predictable. And I smiled, but it wasn't the smile of defense. It was the smile of someone who finally understood. They still thought they knew me. They didn't. They had no idea I'd chosen the caterer, that I'd negotiated the floral contract, that the playlist had my suggestions woven into every beat, that the lighting, the seating, the music, all of it, had my fingerprints. And still, I stood there invisible. Like always. But this time it didn't hurt. This time I just observed, holding a kind of power that doesn't make noise, but fills the entire room. Then she walked in. My sister. Radiant. Whole. Joyful. And when our eyes met, she gave me that look. The look that said, I see you. And right then, I knew it had all been worth it. The judgment, the whispers, the side glances, none of it mattered anymore. Because love had always been my anchor. And in that moment, love was all I could feel. I sat in the back, not because I had to, but because I understood my own worth now. And while they laughed and chatted and raised their glasses, I just waited, because something in me knew. This night wasn't done. And this time, truth would be the one to speak. The ceremony was beautiful. Vows spoken through tears, smiles shared under applause. The couple walked hand in hand through the hall as guests settled in for the reception. The lights shifted. The music faded. And then my sister walked up to the microphone. I thought it would be the usual thank you speech. Something polite, safe, predictable. But the way she looked at me, it stopped me cold. There was something in her eyes. And I knew something was about to be said. This beautiful celebration, she began, her voice trembling, wouldn't have been possible without my sister, Savannah. The entire room went still. Truly still. The clinking of silverware stopped. A glass was quietly set down. One cousin choked slightly on his champagne. And me. I froze. It felt like my legs had vanished beneath me. No one knew what to make of it. Some laughed nervously. Others frowned in confusion. But she kept going, and every word felt like a spotlight piercing through years of shadows. She never asked for credit. She never wanted the attention. But she paid for everything. Every detail. Every flower. Every smile here today has her touch. Aunt whispered, "No way." Uncle looked away. My grandparents exchanged quiet murmurs. But I only saw my sister, standing there, brave and steady, finally speaking truths I had carried in silence for years. For the first time, someone told my story, the real one, out loud, unfiltered, without shame. I felt my face burn, not from embarrassment, but from emotion finally breaking the surface. Her words were sunlight on dry ground. For years, I'd been called a burden, a disappointment, dead weight, and now, in front of everyone, my kindness was no longer invisible. It wasn't about vanity. It was about justice. Someone saw me and chose to say it out loud. The applause started slowly. Some clapped out of awkwardness. Others, maybe from guilt. But I accepted it. Eyes forward. No shrinking back. Because that moment wasn't about me. It was about her. About us. Two women raised in the same house. Living in different worlds. But always on the same side. The side of love that protects, not punishes. She smiled from the stage. I smiled back. Tears held back. But peace finally blooming inside me. After the speech, everything shifted. A cousin complimented my dress. An uncle brought me a glass of wine. A grandfather said, "You've really grown up." Like I had transformed overnight. But I didn't respond with stories. Because I knew this wasn't recognition. It was surprise. They weren't proud. They were stunned, trying to rewrite the past now that they'd learned how it ends. But I wasn't there to be celebrated. I was there for her. During the party, I watched the conversations shift. She owns 3 businesses. Since when? Why didn't anyone know? My parents, finally free from secrecy, spoke with pride. She built it all on her own. Works harder than anyone we know. I heard it from across the room, and I smiled, not out of ego, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for hearing my story told by the people who once had no words. Aunt came over and asked gently, "So, when you have a moment, I'd love to hear more about what you do." I answered politely, "Of course." But deep down I knew. Curiosity is not the same as support, and interest is not the same as love. I wasn't there to be admired, or to be their latest fascination. I was there to celebrate love, my sister's love for me, and my love, finally, for myself. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw anything in anyone's face. I just lived, quietly, as always. But this time, the silence wasn't loneliness. It was dignity, composure, strength. That night, I didn't have to say a word. Because truth spoke for me. It didn't take long. Just a few days after the wedding, the messages started trickling in, disguised as casual questions, always filtered through my parents. Is Savannah hiring? Think she's looking for someone she can trust? Of course, they didn't come to me directly. They never did. Now that word had spread about the businesses. Some uncles and cousins suddenly decided it was time to reconnect. Not to apologize, but to explore an opportunity. Curiosity wrapped in convenience. And convenience has a scent, one I've learned to recognize from miles away. My parents told me carefully, like they were bracing for me to feel hurt. But I didn't. I just smiled. No anger. Just clarity. They weren't happy for me. They were uncomfortable. Uncomfortable with the truth that they'd misjudged me for years. And now, trying to slip into my life was easier than confronting their own regret. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The one who begged to be accepted. She was long gone. I remembered every laugh. Every joke at my expense during family dinners. Every time I was cut off mid-sentence so they could praise someone else. Every helpful suggestion dressed as concern. You really need to wake up. Business isn't for everyone. You're gonna end up alone. All those memories came back. But they didn't hurt anymore. They were just reminders of how far I'd come. So I made a decision. No replies, no coffee meetings, no open doors. The businesses I built grew from the very pain they planted, and I wasn't about to let them harvest what they didn't help grow. This wasn't revenge. It was protection, a boundary, self-respect. The woman I am now knows that success should never be shared with the people who try to bury its seed. And respect, that's not something you hand out to those who only show up when they smell profit. My sister understood before I even said anything. You don't owe them a thing, Savannah, she told me. She's always known, always seen, and now more than ever, she reminded me the strength that brought me here came from resisting, not from pleasing. If I had stopped to win over the same people now holding out their hands, I never would have made it. I would have lost myself trying to fit where I never belonged. Some relatives insisted. They sent resumes, emails, messages pretending we'd always been close. I always knew you'd make it. I read them all with a strange mix of pity and disbelief. My parents asked what they should say. I told them, just tell them I'm focused on internal projects. And that was the truth. Because now, my projects involve something they'd never understand. Peace. I kept living, with more lightness than ever before. I expanded my team, moved to a new place, took a trip with my sister just to celebrate this new chapter for both of us. I didn't want to just work. I wanted to build something with meaning, with soul, something no one could ever take away. Because it wasn't built for show. It was built to last. And to protect that, some names had to stay on the outside. One afternoon, over lunch with friends, someone asked me, "Don't you ever feel like rubbing it in their faces?" I laughed. A real laugh. Free. Weightless. If I needed that, I never would have won. Because my greatest achievement wasn't the money, wasn't the companies. It was becoming someone who no longer needed revenge to feel whole. And that's how I gave them my answer. No yelling. No confrontation. Just living. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest way to say, only those who stayed when I had nothing get to stay now. As time went on, some names simply faded from my life. Relatives who once had something to say about every step I took went quiet or vanished completely. Others tried to circle back, offering compliments, thinly veiled as kindness. They started leaving emojis on photos, commenting here and there, trying to look like they'd always been supportive. But I saw them for what they were, people who couldn't handle being wrong, and who had willingly missed the best of me. My life kept moving. It expanded. It thrived. The businesses grew, yes. But what filled me most was the calm, the absence of fear, the freedom of no longer needing approval. The old Savannah wanted to be seen. The new one, she just wanted to be true to herself. My schedule was full, but my heart was light, and around me, only those remained, who had always held my hand, even when I had nothing to give back. My sister became my best friend. Our bond bloomed in a way it never had before. Sometimes, it felt like we were two survivors, from the same emotional war, and now we were finally breathing. She stood up for me at family gatherings. Even when I didn't need it, it was like she was silently saying, "I saw it all, and I won't let them erase you again." With her I felt safe, whole, seen. Even my parents changed. The same ones who once stayed silent when others criticized me, now spoke with a spark in their eyes. They showed photos, told my story like it was a trophy they proudly carried, and I let them, because behind that pride was an unspoken apology. They knew how long it took for them to truly see me. But now, they made sure the world saw me too. Then came another family event. My grandmother's 80th birthday. A rented hall, decorated tables, soft background music. And me. Once again, I ordered an Uber, wore something nice but simple, and walked in alone, as always. But this time, the air was different. No whispers. No side eyes, just space, silence, and respect. For the first time, I didn't have to force my presence. It was already felt. At the entrance, I caught a whisper. That's her, the businesswoman in the family. A short phrase, but full of something I'd never felt from them before. Admiration. I saw a cousin, the same one who once called me a hopeless dreamer, lower his eyes. I said nothing, just walked, because now, even my silence had weight. They never noticed when I walked in before. But now, there was no hiding the fact that I was there. During dinner, the comments came. Cautious compliments, disguised questions. So what is it you do again? How big's your team now? I answered kindly, but I didn't open any doors, because being present doesn't mean being available. Maturity taught me this. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. And not every renewed connection deserves full access. Some relationships die, even when they're still smiling. When it was time to leave, I said goodbye with grace, hugged my sister with gratitude, kissed my parents with tenderness. I got into my Uber, leaned my head back, and smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because, finally, there was nothing left to prove. I had won, without screaming, without begging, without revenge, just by being exactly who I'd always been, until the world had no choice but to see it. They never noticed me walk in, because their backs were turned, but when they finally looked up, there I was, calm, steady, unshakable. I'm Savannah Collins, the woman they never saw coming, but who now takes up space without asking permission. If you like the story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and if you want to help me keep telling these stories, you can buy me a coffee. The link's in the first pinned comment. Every cup helps me bring more stories to you.